another day, another school shooting in America, and another round of ridiculous hot takes.
They obviously didn't release a motive as to why she shot up the school, but I have a pretty good guess. What have Christians been doing lately? They've been banning books about LGBT. They've been discriminating against the LGBT. They are banning drag shows. So people are screaming, oh my God, it's a hate crime against Christians. But how about they are the ones that were bullying her first?
Today, in my criminal justice courses, we discussed the Nashville shooting. And thankfully, my students raised awareness around the fact that a lot of the media is misgendering the shooter. Which, why do we care? They unalived like 6 people, including children. We do not condone that awful behavior, so screw them and everything they're associated with, right? Wrong, because in my area of study, of work, we look at the why. The why, in my opinion, is just as significant, if not more so, than the what. And I can't help but think this trans man targeted a Christian school that he attended, that he may have had very negative experiences at, how much the anti-LGBTQ legislation impacted his mental health to push him to this point.
Just from a sociological perspective, looking at it on its face, somebody who lives in Nashville, who is just top of the news for all these discriminatory bills, who identifies as male and I assume to be transgender, who has already now, as an adult, probably experiencing a lot of discrimination and hate because of these bills, but also has probably experienced this all of their life. People don't just go up and shoot up a Christian school, being the demographic that they are in the political climate that we're in, just because they felt like it. Like all of the other mass shootings, when all of these dudes just did it for fun, or they're anti-Semitic, or nobody would fuck them, those reasons.
It seems like he was an old student from that Christian academy. Also in Tennessee, where they recently banned drag shows in a law that is so vague. My wife, who wears men's clothes but identifies as a woman, could get arrested walking down the streets of Tennessee. So while I do not think what the shooter did was justified in any way, shape, or form, and they absolutely need help, could it be potentially that this person is transgender, was transgender, and with all of the laws being placed, he was afraid that he was going to be ridiculed and put into a box, kind of like the school maybe did when he was younger and didn't want to be called what he was being called?
I wonder if the parents of the victims of the Nashville shooting today would still have their children if these trans bills in Tennessee were never a thing. I'm not a parent, but if I were, I'd be real mad at the government. I'd be real mad at the government.
You have a transgender person that was finally pushed so far and traumatized so much by the Christian conservative right that they snapped. They did the unthinkable, the unfathomable, and they murdered children. And now that very group of Christian right conservatives will use that transgender person as a poster for why transgender people are evil and need to be eliminated, even though they created the environment that allowed that monster to develop. They are equally responsible. And this is the methodology this entire country has been built on since the beginning. We did it to the indigenous. They were labeled as savages because they wanted to protect their way of life, their land, their lives. We did it to black people and continue labeling them as angry and violent because they didn't want to be enslaved. And then anytime a marginalized group puts together enough organization and wherewithal to gain real political power, our government goes in and absolutely decimates them. They did it to the Black Panthers. They did it at Rosewood, Tulsa, and so many more. And then they use Christianity because they don't believe the Christian teachings. They use Christianity to justify their hate and get all of us to buy into it. And it allows them to continue making the monsters that they need to feed us fear and keep us from going after the root cause of all of these monsters, and that is whiteness and white supremacy. And white women stand by the white men, fully complacent and equally responsible, because we are the ones that could tip the scales. But we don't want to endure any discomfort for any length of time. So we stand by, we wring our hands and say we feel so bad for people, and thoughts and prayers to the families that lost their children. All in the name of whiteness. Anyway, I'm just done. I'm sorry I yelled.
Aiden Hale, that's the name of the Nashville shooter. This video is about to be very uncomfortable for a lot of us. It's very uncomfortable for me to talk about, but we need to talk about it. Aiden did a very horrendous thing. Period, point blank. We need pew pew reform in our country. But the way that the media and the police are misgendering and dead naming Aiden is quite concerning. It's also concerning that I had to go to the Telegraph from UK to actually get Aiden's chosen name. It's upsetting that constantly it is she, her pronouns. That is incredibly frustrating, because even though they did this horrible thing does not mean that we get to do those things. That's a boundary, and we can hold people accountable without being transphobic, even for some of the most horrendous things. So while you're watching this, also watch for transphobia, because that's very clearly coming out.
Now, after 3 minutes of hearing what people have to say about this recent school shooting, I have a question for everybody, and I really want you to think about this. Does it matter? Does it matter that there are laws in Tennessee that exist that are harming trans people? Does it matter that a bunch of people are getting upset that people on the news are misgendering an active murderer who is no longer on the fucking planet? Does it matter about any other reason you could come up with for any other school shooting, whether if it's a trans dude, a black woman, a white cis hetero transformer? None of these things, at least to me, matter. Why? Because you could come up with any excuse possible. Video games, life at home, bullying. None of these things will make me sit back and say, you know, it's reasonable to understand why you picked up a gun and went into a school and shot a bunch of people, specifically 9-year-old children, because yes, the pain in America is something that's reasonable for you to do anything that is unlawful. I can't sit here and say I'm surprised, because no matter the person, whether if it fits any narrative based on any political affiliation, there's always going to be somebody who makes a stupid excuse. Now, one would ask me, what's the solution to stopping all these school shootings? And I'm gonna honestly tell you, I have no idea. The strongest argument to me is something along the lines of gun control. However, you have to take into consideration people break laws and they'll end up stealing a gun, getting it from their parents, a family member that's distant, or stealing it from a store and doing whatever the hell they want with it. So I don't really have an answer to you as to how we could magically stop a bunch of people from doing violent things. We could put in some effort, we could put in some real thought, but just going around and saying these bills don't misgender an active murderer, don't say that these things aren't justified reasons, as to make some weird excuse, even though you want to say it's not an excuse, as to justify murder, then we're all fucked. So like I say now, because I'm a little bit black-pilled in this scenario, when the next school shooting happens, and again, don't really care what the skin color or the sexuality, gender affirmation, whatever word you want to throw out, because it really doesn't matter, when the next time this happens, because it'll happen probably next week, don't be surprised. Just sit there and say, fuck, what we gonna do? How we gonna solve it? How? Who gonna solve it? What rules gonna be put in place? And how can we actively come together as a society that bitches about the most mundane things, from people being upset that hockey players aren't wearing gay pride flags to Twitter Blue costing more than $1? What we gonna do? I don't know. I'm just sitting here enjoying the fun. I'm enjoying the circus of a bunch of people, no matter who it is, making a bunch of excuses for somebody who don't fucking deserve it. So to anybody who's going around trying to play the sympathy card like the people I showed you, fuck you. You know why? Because no matter the skin, no matter the gender, no matter whatever, You're trying to throw justification on a fucking murderer. So for that, fuck you.